Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Fit and Form podcast, the second edition second part of the Awesemo Golf podcast series. In this short podcast, what I do is go over the fit from the course, or what I should say, I go over the recent form, the course history, and try and find some course fit. I also throw in some information about strokes gained, and of course, if you're new to that, it's a great podcast to listen to in terms of how to get information from it and how to use it. And of course, if you're familiar with it, then you'll just get a good recap of golfers that I think have a good statistical profile fit. So an all-encompassing one, roughly about 15 minutes long or so. So I always start off this one by reviewing just a quickle, there it is again. I think that's the second time I maybe have said that word. A couple of quick notes from the First Cut article that is live and of course free on the Awesemo site. That is, like I said, free each and every week as well. 66% of the greens in regulation are hit this week. That comes from 64% of the fairways and a lot of drivers. 61% scrambling, so up and down when you do end up missing. A couple of quick notes there. Of course, the nice thing about this time of year, before we move on to TPC Boston, we've got the leaves changing, of course. We're going to get some great scenery there at TPC Boston. But we've got NBA playoffs as well. I know that's crazy to say. They're playing a couple of games a day here for the next week or so. So a great time to use our new promo code MAMBA, good until 8/24. What it does is it gives you basically 50% off the weekly price for Awesemo's NBA projections and tools, some of the best in the industry. So this, again, use promo code MAMBA when checking out, and you're going to get your free weekly premium pass for just $8.24. A great time to use it. So going on, like I said, to TPC Boston, we have 23 golfers that have played all 5 years that I'm looking at. Now, we didn't get to play at this golf course last year. Of course, if you've listened to my content, you already know this. It was the casualty of the new schedule, but it gets back on the schedule or rotation this year. So we'll talk a lot about the 2018 and before results. So since 2014 top 10s, we need at least 2. Patrick Reed has 3. Rory, DJ, Rose, and Paul Casey each have 2. When we switch over to the top 25s, though, we get a couple of different names. Jason Day, Hideki Matsuyama, and Gary Woodland all have 4. Gary Woodland, believe it or not, doesn't have a top 10, though, in those 4 top 25s. In fact, he has 5 top 30s and 5 made cuts. Again, no top 10, though. Whereas Day and Matsuyama each have 1. A couple of other guys have 3 top 25s as well. Patrick Reed, Rory McIlroy, Dustin Johnson, Paul Casey, Jordan Spieth, Jason Kokrak, and Ricky Fowler. 45 golfers have made the cut each and every time they have teed it up here at TPC Boston. No, granted, a couple of those guys, a good handful, a good chunk, I should say, have only competed once or twice, but still something to bring up. When we switch over to the negative side, which always, again, we want to, it's an all-encompassing fit. We want to find golfers that may not be a great fit here. So no top 10s, but have competed each of the last 5 years. Brian Harman, Zach Johnson, Keegan Bradley, Kevin Streelman, Brendan Steele, Charles Howell, and Danny Lee, and of course the aforementioned Gary Woodland, which is crazy. But again, I wouldn't say he has negative course history, seeing as he made the cut each of the 5 times and has 4 top 25s. So at this price this week too, it's not really a bad solution. Cuts: Danny Lee, Russell Henley, Charlie Hoffman, Billy Horschel, Ches Reavie, Kevin Na. They're actually the only guys with multiple missed cuts, and they all have 2. Billy Horschel actually has a withdraw in there as well. So this cut is actually relatively hard to miss, or was in the past. Remember, it was top 70 in ties. So that obviously, it was the top 70 in ties, plus it was over, or it was under 100 golfers, or at most 100 golfers in the field. So that certainly contributed to it. But this year, we get 125 in the top 65, so it'll certainly be tougher to make. Still, I expect it to be somewhat over par, but maybe only 1 or 2 instead of the 3 or 4 that we're used to. Okay, now let's go on to our recent form and check in and see if we can get any correlation there. Top 10s, Bryson has 5 since the restart. That's the stats I'm looking at. 4 goes to Thomas and Day, while 6 others have 3. Xander Schauffele, Daniel Berger, Colin Morikawa, Webb Simpson, Tony Finau, and Patrick Reed. So right off the bat, we've got Patrick Reed showing up in both positive categories. We switch over to the top 25. Xander Schauffele, Harris English, and Daniel Berger all have top 25s in 80% of their starts. Abraham Answer, Cam Champ, and Hideki Matsuyama are all 4 for 6 in finishing inside the top 25. So Hideki Matsuyama is your second crossover in both of those. So far we have Patrick Reed and Hideki Matsuyama. In terms of cuts, 9 golfers, if you include Woods and Scott, have made every cut. That's Abe Answer, Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Scott Stallings, Rory McIlroy, and Adam Hadwin. So there's Rory McIlroy showing up. While the upside hasn't been there, he also hasn't really played that bad either. So we'll see if the money in the FedEx Cup is motivating enough, since no fans being there has definitely hurt Rory's game. Maybe the money will get him motivated, though. We switch over to the negative side of the spectrum in recent form. Funny enough, no top 10s for Hideki Matsuyama or Rory McIlroy for that matter. Tommy Fleetwood as well, Matt Kuchar, Brendan Todd, Harris English. Again, when we switch over to the top 25s, that changes a little bit, where for some of the guys, but others like Tommy Fleetwood, Mark Leishman, and Cameron Smith are among the 25 golfers still searching for a top 25. Again, 54 of the 125 golfers are still searching for their top 10. Lastly, before we go into our strokes gained information, everybody in the field has earned at least one paycheck in the last 10 weeks. But Wyndham Clark, he's the only guy with 7 missed cuts. Xingzhu Zhang, Bo Hostler, and Brian Gay all have 5. Okay, so that will do it for the course form and history. We've found 2 crossovers, Hideki Matsuyama and Patrick Reed. I guess if you also include Gary Woodland, he has had 2 top 25s in the last 4 weeks. Not a great start, of course, at the PGA Championship. Finished somewhere in the 60s, but still has 2 top 25s and all those top 25s here at TPC Boston. So those would be the course fit and form. Now we'll go see if we can match it up with strokes gained. But before we do, I want to, of course, thank the sponsor of this podcast and the continued support from Superdraft. And, of course, you can use a lot of this information to go find some good sleepers over on the Superdraft multiplier format. Now, if you don't know about the multiplier format, I'm about to tell you right now. So the future of daily fantasy sports has arrived. Experience Superdraft's exclusive game mode multiplier. In that, you get to say goodbye to salary restrictions and hello to lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge to draft any player you want and build your very own dream team. Countless lineup possibilities let you experience daily fantasy sports the way you want to. Superdraft offering contest right now for PGA, NASCAR, NBA, MLB, and MMA, so you can enjoy the best of DFS all year round. Sign up for Superdraft today using promo code Awesemo10, and it's 10 free on your first deposit of 10 or more, and 20 total free on your first deposit of 100 or more. Download in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. Superdraft, no limit and more winning. Okay, let us go on to the strokes gained portion, where very interesting, some of the names that pop up here. We're only going to talk about maybe the last 8 or 10 weeks. So strokes gained total. Xander Schauffele has been the most consistent over the previous 8 weeks, gaining at least 1.25 strokes gained total in 5 starts. He eclipses 8 others who have done it 4 times, including the likes of Doc Redmond, Siwoo Kim, Harris English, and Matthew Wolff. However, in terms of strokes gained total per start, Daniel Berger leads at just shy of 2 per start. Bryson DeChambeau also up there as well at just under 2 per start. A couple of other guys that you might find. We just talked about Harris English, Xander Schauffele, Justin Thomas, Billy Horschel also up there in the top 10, as well as Webb Simpson, Abraham Answer, and Russell Henley. We move on to our strokes gained tee to green, which of course just takes out the putting. Total strokes gained over the last 10 weeks, tee to green. That's an interesting stat for this week that we've talked about. Siwoo Kim actually leads in total strokes gained, that is. Now, that doesn't mean he's doing it on the average. On the average, it actually goes to Justin Thomas, who's averaging just about 1.6 per start tee to green. Russell Henley also there right around 1.6. Daniel Berger falls down a little bit here to 1.2. In fact, Sam Burns, John Rahm, and Siwoo Kim have all gained more strokes tee to green than Daniel Berger. So obviously, Danny relying a little bit on his putting there. Victor Hovland, Jason Day, Tony Finau round out the top 10. In terms of golfers that have gained at least 1.25 strokes in 5 or more starts. It only goes to Russell Henley, whereas Jason Day has done it 4 times. A bunch of others have done it 3. Okay, now let's head on over to our strokes gained off the tee. And what I'm doing is I'm taking out ball striking in short game because I find I'm repeating the names a little too much. Since those categories are compromised of some of the ones we're already going to go over anyway, I thought I might as well just skip or cut those 2 out. So strokes gained off the tee. Over the last 10 weeks, it's so incredible how far beyond everybody else Bryson DeChambeau is. He's gained almost 10 total strokes off the tee over the last 10 weeks. The next closest guy hasn't even gotten to 6. That's Bubba Watson. And in terms of average per start, he averages 1.4 per start. The next closest guy, Cameron Champ, averaging probably somewhere close to 0.9, not even 1. So almost a half a stroke better than everybody else on average per start for Bryson DeChambeau. It's crazy. A couple of other guys that have been quite consistent off the tee as well. Bubba Watson, Cam Champ, John Rahm, Rory McIlroy, Matthew Wolff, Jason Kokrak, Paul Casey, Scotty Scheffler, Xing Jun Zhang, and Colin Morikawa. All of the guys have gained at least a quarter of a stroke 5 different times. Okay, now we go on. Strokes gained off the tee. Now we go on to strokes gained on the approach. I probably was reading just a little bit too far advanced. Sorry about that, or too far forward. Strokes gained on the approach, it is a little closer. Justin Thomas has the most strokes gained on the approach since the restart, just over 7. Russell Henley comes in not too far behind. And neither does Joaquin Niemann, who's been very good with his approaches, but has not been that good elsewhere. Lucas Glover also been good with his approaches, as has Victor Hovland. But none of them that I just mentioned, except for Justin Thomas, have gained more strokes on the approach than Henrik Norlander over the last 10 weeks. He averages about 1.15 per start. Justin Thomas is just above that at about, I think Norlander's like up 1.05 and Thomas is at 1.1, somewhere in that range. Tiger Woods in his couple of starts also right above 1. Last 8 weeks, Russell Henley, he pops up again, gaining at least a half a stroke with his irons 5 times over the last 8 weeks, as has Shane Lowry. A bunch of other people have done it 4 times. Now, as we work our way through the bag and we go into our strokes gained around the green, Brian Harman has gained over 8 strokes around the green since the return here, which is a pretty staggering number. The next closest guy, Patrick Reed, has gained just over 5. That gives Brian Harman an average of over 1 per start. Seems unsustainable, to be honest with you, especially with the next closest guy being Tommy Fleetwood at 0.7. Brian Harman has gained over a quarter of a stroke at least 6 times, and that's obviously probably no surprise. He's also had a couple of times where he's gained a lot. So a couple of other guys that have done it at least 5 times, or actually Jason Day is the only one who have done it 5 times, gained over a quarter of a stroke. 3 other names have done it at least 4 times: Harold Varner, Tommy Fleetwood, and Dylan Fratelli. Okay, now the last stat we're going to look at, strokes gained putting. And of course, it's very important. We don't ever want to leave it out. It may be hard to handicap or hard to read exactly who's going to putt well because it is the most variable one out there. But if we look at stats like this that we have here, this certainly can help at least find some of the guys that have been consistent over the last 10 weeks and guys that have been hot for a while. So as we move on to our strokes gained putting, okay, it's obviously been the Denny McCarthy and Jordan Spieth category for the last year, but over the last 8 weeks, Jordan Spieth has actually really struggled. I mean, really struggled. After the Colonial War, yes, he did gain 2 strokes putting. He hasn't even gained a quarter since then. So really tough go bet for him. McCarthy has done well, but nobody has done better than Mackenzie Hughes. Mackenzie Hughes has gained, since coming back, has gained over 8 strokes with his putter, as has Matthew Fitzpatrick. Next closest bunch would be Bryson DeChambeau and Denny McCarthy, who I just mentioned. When we look at the last 8 weeks, Adam Long and both Mackenzie Hughes have gained a quarter of a stroke on the field at least 6 times. Denny McCarthy has done it 5. Billy Horschel, Troy Merritt, Bryson DeChambeau, Kevin Kisner, Ian Poulter, and Sepp Straka are a couple of the other names that have gained at least a quarter of a stroke putting over the last 8 weeks. So that'll do it for the Fit in the Form podcast, where again I've gone over the course history, recent form, and tried to match up some strokes gained data with it. Stroke gain tee degree going to be very important this week. So guys like Justin Thomas, who have some good course history, winning here and playing well, strokes gained tee to green should line up pretty well for him. Other guys, Siwoo Kim is certainly in form there as well. A couple of other guys, Russell Henley, John Rahm, Sam Burns, Victor Hovland, and Jason Day. So until next time, everybody, depending on when you're listening to this, we've got plenty of more content coming out for the week. And it is all, of course, wrapped up with our live show, 8:30, Ben Raz and I on the Live Before Lock. You can catch us each and every week. We go over everything you need to know. If there's any weathers, there are any withdraws, all of the above and so much more. So join us then. And until next time, everybody, thank you for coming by the Fit in the Forum podcast. And we will see you on the other side, hopefully for the Against the Grain podcast in the morning. If you're listening to this on Tuesday, you'll hear it on Wednesday morning where I talk about ownership specifically for the DFS slate. So until then, everybody, thanks for joining, and we'll see you on the other side. Cheers.